All right, we're going to talk about Ocasio-Cortez. I know a lot of you are probably tired of hearing about her, but this was something that I thought was a little interesting. Not only because it has to do with her, but because it's a little bit of a distinction. So there was a claim made earlier today that Ocasio-Cortez went to the National Action Network conference in New York City and put on an affected black accent. And people all the time talk with kind of different accents depending on who they're talking to. I don't think that it's unique to politicians, but I can say sometimes I talk a little bit more, you know, country depending on who I'm talking to. Sometimes it's not even, sometimes the way I do it is usually to mock somebody else that I know who is trying to get on my nerves. That's something that I kind of slip into it naturally. I don't even think about it anymore. It's pretty messed up, and I'll admit it. And people have made fun of me for it, but I do it all the time, and it's usually I'm admitting it right here and right now. I am doing it to piss people off. If you ever catch me talking a little like this, so just like stupid, like hillbilly talk. So listen to this. I'll let you be the judge, but I'll also put my thoughts into it.
For the future of America. This is what organizing looks like. Right. This is what building power looks like. This is what changing the country looks like. It's when we choose to show up and occupy the room and talk about the things that matter most, talking about our future. Reverend, you bring up a funny anecdote, and I'm proud to be a bartender. Ain't nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with working retail, folding clothes for other people to buy. There is nothing wrong with preparing the food.
All right, let's take a break from that. Now listen to
All
this
we
speech.
say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges.
Okay, I'm sure you know what the voice behind that, who that voice was. That was the voice of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the late Reverend Dr. King. So I would say that this is not really necessarily an affected black accent or urban accent or whatever you want to call it. This is mimicking preacher talk. There's this sort of cadence that people use sometimes when they're talking, especially in certain settings. And that's pretty much the way that she's talking. And I've seen Barack Obama do it. I've seen Biden do it sometimes. I've seen Hillary Clinton do it. I'm not sure if I remember any Republican politicians doing it because they like to pander to the religious right, and that I guess they have a different way of talking over there. This is fake. This is something that is stupid when people do it. Unless you're trying to piss someone off, which is probably the only time when I do it. I usually do something like that, where I'm using a fake accent in order to troll somebody or piss somebody off, not in order to just draw them in and get their vote or something, or get them to support. When you use a fake accent in order to portray yourself as someone that you're not, you're participating in a deception, okay? And really, this is what it's come to when you communicate to people of certain backgrounds, instead of actually giving them a rational thing to believe in, something that a plan, an idea, or anything. So she talked about the New Deal a bit there. And she talks about being a radical in this speech. And it's a longer speech, and I don't have time in this segment to go into that. But Ocasio-Cortez's image among her supporters depends on her spunkiness and her ability to just clap back at whoever is attacking her, and that plays well among her supporters. Okay, so it's the same thing that I like to talk about with Beyonce. Okay, with Beyonce, for example, I'm going to pull up this article for a second. We're going to get to this though. So teaser. So Beyonce. So apparently, this is from The Root, and they said Beyonce has reportedly walked out on Reebok for lacking diversity. Apparently, Reebok was going to partner up with her, and it says here, Beyonce's walk may be iconic, but if she walks out on you, it's not a good look. That's what Reebok reportedly found out the hard way while negotiating. Here, blackness in my inbox daily. Should I subscribe, guys? No, I'm not going to say. Sorry. I like to go out and look for the blackness. Okay, I don't need it handed to me in my inbox. Thank you. That's what Reebok reportedly found out the hard way while negotiating with the megastar ahead of the eventual partnership she announced with Adidas on Thursday. The reason Reebok wasn't able to seal a deal with Queen Bee, according to ESPN writer Nick DiPaola, their pitch team was lacking diversity. So that's what we've come to. So a lot of people they basically believe that Beyonce is a goddess who's essentially, she's the symbol of Black American royalty, and that's the way it is. Beyonce is somebody who moves in the highest echelons of power in order to represent Black America according to her, and that's what they think is the best thing that they ever had. Somebody who will clap back at Adidas, at Reebok, when they don't send a pitch team that has any diversity among them. And that is, in my opinion, one of the most ridiculous things that I've ever heard. When you get a pitch team, it's the people who put together the project that's meant to get you on board, okay? It's not their fault that they got picked for the project, unless maybe they requested it. Maybe somebody wanted to get onto it that's a minority and didn't get onto it. You don't know that. That's something that is up to the company who they send as a representative to you. Let's say if, for example, I need service on my power lines outside and I don't have power, and a crew shows up, I'm not going to go out to the crew and complain about why there's no Mexicans or why there's no Jews or why there's no Russians or why there's no midgets or something. But the diversity people don't care about that. So they look at people like Beyonce, they look at people like Ocasio-Cortez, and they say, look at this. This is the real way to represent for minorities in America. I'm sorry to tell you that this is not going to help minorities in America when you pander to them and when you fight for all this diversity crap, because ultimately when you diversify a group, you put for example, this is something that I remember reading in the biography Shakedown of Jesse Jackson. Jesse Jackson used to go to these companies and squeeze them and tell them, look, if you don't hire more executives who are Black, I'm going to boycott you and I'm going to announce all this and I'm going to put all this negative pressure on you in the media and everything, and you're going to lose sales and business and whatever. What would they do? They usually put on their board or somewhere a senior level of the company somebody who was a Black person. But usually that was one person who was already pretty rich because they'd come from another executive position, and they were already pretty they wouldn't necessarily reinvest the money that they were making in the Black community. So you had Jesse Jackson essentially working as an executive talent agent for corporate America. That didn't really help the Black community at large when in the 80s and 90s when he was at the high point of his influence under Presidents Bush and Clinton. So, that's what I have to say about it, Beyonce. But back to Ocasio-Cortez. What I'm trying to say is that what she does, the things that she does, saying things the way she does, and doing things the way she's doing them, they're going to keep her very popular among the community that loves her. Just like the Beyonce fan base. People in the Beyonce fan base, people who read The Root, people like that are going to look at it and say, oh, this is amazing. Look at how she represents us. She walks the walk or whatever. It doesn't really change anything for everybody. It's symbolic nonsense. It doesn't make any impact. And I'm sure that there's some black people who probably say, don't come to our conference and pretend to talk like one of our preacher reverends or something. It's kind of some people will probably say, well, it's disparaging and patronizing as well. So here she is. This is what's screwed up. About, what is it? Almost 5 months ago, she goes to this place, the Jackson Heights Jewish Center in Queens, and she said that she traced her ancestry back to 15th century Sephardic Jews. And then she says, the rising Democratic star drew cheers with the revelation, which she told Haaretz was the first time she had spoken publicly about her family's Jewish heritage. I knew it. I sensed it, she said, highlighting a member of the audience who reacted to her revelation. One of the things that we discovered about ourselves is that very, very long time ago, generations and generations ago, my family consisted of Sephardic Jews, she said, referring to Jews who originally came from Spain or the Iberian Peninsula. And the story goes that during the Spanish Inquisition, so many people were forced to convert on the exterior to Catholicism, but on the interior, continued to practice their faith, continued to be who they were, even though they were pressured to not be that on the outside world. To the outside world, it should read. Ocasio-Cortez, who made the comments after lighting Hanukkah candles, said some of those practitioners fled Spain, with some landing in Puerto Rico, where she descends from. Ocasio-Cortez added that the lineage shows that so many of our destinies are tied. On Monday morning, Ocasio-Cortez posted a series of tweets about her Jewish heritage, responding to coverage of her remarks. And she says, before everyone jumps on me, yes, culture is in DNA, but to be Puerto Rican is to be the descendant of African Moors and slaves, Taino Indians, Spanish colonizers, Jewish refugees, and likely others. We are all of these things and something else all at once. We are Boricua. Boricua is, by the way, it's like the local word, the word that the Puerto Rican people themselves call Puerto Rico. So there's this article. It says, these articles come out all the time, and this is from Jewish Telegraph Agency. Let's find something a little less. Okay, this is from Nature.com. So Nature.com is a pretty well-respected scientific journal. It says, Latin Americans show widespread converso ancestry and imprint of local native ancestry on physical appearance. So yes, there are a lot. This is not unique to, by the way, Puerto Rico. There are a lot of people all around Latin America that happen to have some heritage from Jews who converted to Catholicism, also known as conversos. And so they trace it back through, and I guess, mitochondrial DNA and Y chromosome data in Northwest Colombia involved local native women, and that some immigrant men carried haplogroups common in Jewish populations. So yes, there is DNA evidence suggesting that a lot of these people did end up going to Latin America, but it is a pandering moment too. And I'll explain why. She mentioned that on the interior, they continue to practice their faith, continue to be who they were, even though they were pressured not to be that on the outside world. Well, what the hell does that have to do with you, Ocasio-Cortez? She's not a practicing Jew, which is really what the issue was. These people wouldn't have had to leave Spain if they had converted to Judaism fully and accepted, the church's, what do you call it? To accept, baptism and accept the Catholic faith entirely. That was the real issue, and many of them were ended up being persecuted because the church did not believe that their conversion was in good faith, and in fact, some of them were not in good faith. I mean, let's just put that on the table. So this is a religious issue. This is a religious issue, and yet Ocasio-Cortez and the group that she supports, the Democratic Socialists of America, she's a part of that group. She's a part of a number of other groups within the progressive constellation that are adamantly opposed to any, for example, they are explicitly anti-Zionist. Okay, in some cases they do say things that are anti-Semitic. Okay, not pointing specifically at her. And what they end up doing is claiming that, well, through my heritage, my ancestors, yes, I am descended from Jewish refugees. Those Jewish refugees were banished from Spain because they were wanting to be practicing Jews. Okay? So then she's going to go to a crowd of people, and she's not practicing Judaism. She's probably not practicing Catholicism either, as far as we know. We never see any sort of exclamation of her own Catholic heritage, which is probably for sure if you're from Puerto Rico. So when she goes to a black audience, she uses a black preacher's cadence. When she goes to a Jewish audience, she talks up her Spanish heritage that was, Sephardic, Jewish, or whatever. This is blatant pandering. And a politician who does things like that is for sure going to be a corrupt and slimy person. Okay, it doesn't matter how nice she packages herself. It doesn't matter how sympathetic a figure she cuts. When you go and you represent yourself in different ways to different audiences based on your personal need and how you want them to react to you, that is basically that's selling snake oil. That's what I would call it. And I think it, personally, I don't really take much offense from things people do, but I think that this is retarded. I think it's something that if you buy into it, you deserve to be fooled in the end. You deserve to be scammed if you fall for things like this. It turns out that this was put on by Jews for racial and economic justice, and they are a racist group within the Jewish community. They mostly they try to recruit people who are Jews of color, they call them, who happen to be mixed race or happen to, they come from one of the non-European Jewish communities or whatever, or they may, let's say their mother is Jewish and their father is Asian or whatever. So they tend to try to recruit those people and drive a wedge within the Jewish community between those that they consider white Jews, as Linda Sarsour actually called them. I think she even said it today. she called like a bunch of them white Jews, which, by the way, I wouldn't fit into that definition since my parents were, my mom was Iraqi. So, so yeah, Linda Sarsour said this. So these people who are, they're not Jewish. Linda Sarsour is not Jewish. Ocasio-Cortez is not Jewish. Linda Sarsour is not black. Ocasio-Cortez is technically, she would have some black heritage from Puerto Rico. But they are trying blatantly to pander to minorities and create a massive minority coalition in favor of their agenda. I don't believe in that. I believe you present the ideas to people as individuals, and they make the choice to support it, whether whether their community supports it or not. If you don't treat people as individuals, then you shouldn't expect them to understand your ideas, because they don't have to treat you as an individual either. They can just assume that you belong to a broader group or something, and that you're selling something because you represent a group of people. That's really the essence of opposing progressivism, opposing socialism. If you believe in the individual as a person with his own or her own personal views and personal preferences, then you can't believe in this sort of identity politics. And that's really the reason that I go against these people. It's not because You know, there's a lot of people who pretend to be one thing or another. Rachel Dolezal pretended to be black. You have Beto O'Rourke pretending to be Latino. By the way, I'm not Latino at all. You have people who pretend to be Jewish all the time. Whoopi Goldberg, I think she took the surname for some reason because she felt a connection to the Jewish people or something. Her name's not Whoopi Goldberg, obviously. So that's about it. I do have to go today, but I wanted to leave that with you guys for the weekend. And other than that, I should be back sometime either tomorrow night or Sunday. And yeah, just have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you.